I got to meet Neil deGrasse Tyson, who it was a very full circle moment.
Fairy tale, like Disney, hello, if you're watching us. I don't think you would.
I'm a fan right now. Wow.
I found myself, the story's crazy, but...
And there was this one day, I literally just sat in front of my laptop and cried. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just cried.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Season 2, Episode 13 of Smurf House, a podcast where we mostly discuss space stuff, but also end up rambling about a host of other topics, from K-pop to NFTs. This is your host, Pooja, from the Sky Explorers, and
your host, Aleena, the potentially spaced out space policy person. And we all hope that you're having a very good weekend and everything. And to all those people who have joined us for the first time here, we are the podcast team of the Asia Pacific Oceania Space Association, also known as the APOSA, a sustainable space community initiative at the Asia Pacific level. And if you are interested to know more about APOSA, please do look down at the description box, where you can find a wide range of links to APOSA, and you can definitely get engaged with us as well. And through Space Smurfs, we are trying to bring in a variety of space topics wrapped up in a lot of fun and laughter.
Absolutely. We have covered a variety of topics until now. It has left me fascinated, inspired, mind-boggled many a times, and I always feel like me and Aleena are always enlightened after every session. So if you want to be, even for this episode, in fact, I think we have a really interesting expert who's joining us. Are you excited? Because I am. It's somewhere in my domain that the expert is coming from. So I am super excited. What about you, Aleena?
I mean, I really have to say this because I know today's topic is relating to astronomy and all, but the thing is, since Space Smurfs have covered almost a lot of topics right now, and I know we have done a lot of best episodes as well, and I should say that most of these episodes come from the experts who are from astronomy background, like from Aleena to Katie and to the recent Arvind Sir's episode. It was fabulous and it was so insightful. And if you guys are listening to all these people's name for the first time, do check out their episodes as well. It's all on the episode list if you are listening on Spotify or on YouTube. So do check it out and hear them. And they have a lot of things to say about astronomy. Anyway, I know all these astronomers were so adventurous and amazing. I know I talked with them, right? And I'm really, really looking forward to our special guest today. Who is it?
Absolutely. Aleena, if you thought our episodes till now are the best, wait till you hear my introduction for today's guest, because it's going to leave you in an awe, right? She is a resident astronomer at the Blackrock Castle Observatory. That's right. She actually gets to stay in the castle, operate big telescopes, and share her love for astronomy through the various outreach events that they conduct. I am pleased to welcome to you the living, breathing fairy tale every astro woman aspires to be, Danielle Wilcox. Hi, Danielle. We are so glad to have you here.
Hi, that's quite an introduction. Thanks so much for having me.
I know you have been waiting for that line for you to speak in, right? Like me and Pooja have been talking and talking and talking. But anyway, we will have a lot of time to get to know more about you. And for the audience out there, don't forget that, as usual, this coming Saturday, that is 3rd of September, we are going to have a live session with Danielle on Instagram at 7:30 p.m. IST. So if you're interested to know more about astronomy, how this things works with astronomy, how do you go stargazing and everything, join us and listen to Danielle. And also you can ask your questions directly to Danielle, and she will be more than happy to answer you all. So don't miss this opportunity. And with that mentioned, we can begin the smurfing. Yes?
Absolutely. Let me shoot with the first question. I know it because the one thing we have in common, you did mention Katie and Aleena before, is that me, Danielle here, Aleena, Katie, we are all a part of Stella, which is a women astrophotography group. And when I first heard Danielle's story there, I was so happy, and I also felt like, somewhere we connected so deeply. And I feel like she's had such an unusual journey. Daniel, I really would love it if you could share your journey and with our audience, and also tell us how you actually ended up at Blackrock Castle Observatory. Yeah, please do tell us.
Yeah, it's a bit of luck and a bit of brute force, and it's a heck of a journey. It really wasn't their normal path. Like a lot of people would probably go straight into a science degree, and I didn't do that at all. And I kind of always loved the night sky, even as a kid, and I was fortunate enough to be in a place where I grew up in a town outside of a big city, but we had a cabin out in the darkish skies. So I grew up being able to see the Milky Way and seeing skies filled with stars. And so I loved them. I love going out and being able to pick out constellations and that kind of thing, but never knew that was something you could actually work in. So I just admired the sky, but it wasn't anything I ever thought I could do for a living. And my first passion was actually languages. So I went to school and got a degree in Spanish. And I became obsessed with being fluent in another language. I just loved, and the more I learned a language and then started to learn another one, then I wanted another one. And I just went down this spiral of like my degree is Spanish and German. And then I studied a bit of Japanese, a few years of Mandarin Chinese, and a little bit of Italian, and kind of just, and then I lived in Poland for a bit. So I picked up some Polish, and I'm sure there's a few I'm missing in there, but I just loved languages. I knew I wanted to get out. I wanted to travel. I wanted to go other places and live abroad. And so that was kind of the goal. That's what I wanted to do. And that's why I got my degree in that. And that's exactly what happened. I got to study abroad. I got to live abroad. I've lived in 4 different countries, and it did what I needed it to do. My degree was great. But then I got to a point where I was like, but what am I doing with this? Where do I go from here? And I found myself, the story's crazy, but I ended up working in aviation, which wasn't my plan at all, but I ended up working with international students coming in, working as, or training as pilots and aviation mechanics. So I fell in love with aviation. Wasn't my passion, but like once you're in it, you're kind of in it. It's a lot like astronomy, where it's a real small world and you kind of get to know everybody quickly, and it just gets in the blood kind of thing. And while I was there, I was living in Florida, which is like space state. You have Kennedy Space Center there, and it's just kind of all around you. And I ended up one night, I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida, and it's just outside of Tampa. They have their own college there, and the college has a television station that is only broadcast in the local area. That's it. And one night I was flipping through the channels, and SPC, St. Petersburg College, the channel was up on my television, and I never watched that kind of stuff. It was a panel of professors talking about, I didn't know what. I was watching this going, what is happening? Turns out it's a panel of astrophysicists and astronomers. And I at the time had no clue what they were talking about. They were going real in depth. And there was a guy on there who was like pointing all over the place. And he was like, oh yeah, the universe, it's like part of you. But he said this thing in that caught me. And it was, not only do we exist in the universe, it is the universe itself that exists within us. And he didn't mean it in this like hippy dippy kind of metaphor. Like he like literally meant, because he started going through the 5 most abundant elements in the universe and talking about how that's also in our body minus helium, and how everything is made up of space stuff. And I never thought of space that way. I thought of it as something that happened out there. You go out, you see the stars, they're far away, they're up there. Very rarely, I think, does the general public really think about the fact that we're on a rock floating through space like right now. So it kind of put this in my mind like, oh yeah, then that's a totally different way to think about it. Turns out that was Neil deGrasse Tyson. At the time, he wasn't very well known. He was just traveling around doing talks at universities. That was a speech from 2012. And I figured out who he was later on, because then he kind of started picking up like popularity in the US, and he started writing books, and I read a few of his books, and then he was on Cosmos and got his own podcast, Star Talk, and I got sucked into this world through listening to his podcasts. And then he would bring people on, different people in different science fields, and like connect that to astronomy and space, which I thought was fascinating. So there was a podcast, I can't remember who it was, but there was a woman that he had on the podcast. And this that was the kind of turning point that got that seed planted going, But there was a podcast he had with a woman he brought on, and she had the same kind of background as me. It was a liberal arts degree that she had, and she was almost into her 30s and was like, I want to be an astrophysicist. Like, it came out of nowhere. It was a journey for her as well. But that was like, oh, that was the other side of it I needed. That once you got to school and got your degree, that doesn't mean that's the end. You're not done learning. If you want to change, there's nothing to say that you can't. But that was the first time I really had encountered that. So after that, sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I was living in Poland at the time when I was listening to this. And I started to see if there were any astronomy conferences that I could go to in Europe that I could just buy tickets to and go see. And there was a conference called Starmus, and they call it Astronomy Festival. And it was happening in Spain in the Canary Islands. So I thought, I'm going to that, because one of the keynote speakers was Stephen Hawking. Like, how could I not go to that? So I went. There was an unbelievable, it's a week long, pure astronomy, but it was a blend of arts and everything. Like Brian Eno, I think that was the year he was doing music, and they had like a space rapper there, blended in with Brian Greene and Brian Cox, and Neil deGrasse Tyson was also there, and Stephen Hawking, and Carolyn Porco, and all these amazing people within space. And the craziest part about that was that after they were done doing their talks, they were just out and about mingling with people, minus Stephen Hawking, who kind of was taken away with. Yeah. But I got to meet Neil deGrasse Tyson, who it was a very full circle moment where it was like, here I am with the person that kind of started it all. And I got to chat with him. And so it was an amazing experience. But one of the people that I became a big fan of, like in the middle of all of that, was Professor Brian Cox, because he's really more popular here in Europe. And he has a lot of like outreach and a lot of programs about space and the solar system and all of these things. So I started watching a lot of his stuff. He was there that night and that week, but one of the nights, it was after the gala dinner, I went up to him, and here I am dressed in like a red dress, walking up to him. Easily could have gone, hi, I'm Professor Brian Cox. I'm one of the most famous scientists in the world. Did you want my autograph? That's not what happened. I walked up to him and he went, hi. And I went, hi. I'm such a nerd. And then he said, are you a scientist? And I froze, and I was like, oh my God, am I a scientist? No, I'm not a scientist. Like, I couldn't believe it. So I had a great chat with him. He was super humble, super down to earth. I got a photograph with him, and we had a great time chatting about everything. But that was a really big moment for me, because I walked back from that to my house, the place I was staying that night. And on the way back, I thought of my grandmother, who, when she was growing up and going to high school, she was born in 1933. So she would have been in high school probably in the mid 40s, late 40s. So when she was in school, she had told me when I was a kid that she had a teacher who her science teacher believed that girls shouldn't be in science classes. And she was in there with one other girl, and the rest were boys. And every day when she was leaving the class, as she was walking out the door, the teacher would say to her, are you ready to turn in your books yet? And she said, absolutely not. And she made it through, it was chemistry class. She made it through the entire year with this over and over again. But she said, no, she's just a stubborn woman. You know, she was like, I'm going to show him. But she got through it, never did anything with it, didn't become a scientist or a chemist, nothing like that. But she said, I'm going to do it. And I thought, wow, to go from that to walking up to one of the most well-known scientists in the world, and the first thing out of his mouth was, are you a scientist? To be recognized as a woman in that way, I thought, I can't really let that go. I realized in that week, these are my people. This is my group. This is where I need to be. Space and astronomy is it. And then in that moment, I thought, I can't let that go to waste. And so after that, I really just threw myself into figuring out astronomy. I needed to get a telescope at some point. That's my girl in the background there. And I moved again. I moved to Ireland. When I moved, I coincidentally moved down the road from the observatory, Blackrock Castle Observatory. And when I was going out, I found the observatory the first weekend after I moved. And I thought, oh my God, you got to kidding me. I'm right down the road from an observatory. And I took a picture on that day and I said, I don't care if they just let me clean the toilets in that place. I'm going to work there someday. And then a few months later, because I was looking for work and I couldn't get anything, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to walk down there and see if they'll give me a job doing something. And almost 5 years ago to the day, it was a couple of weeks ago, it's the second week of August, I just walked in on a Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock and said, hi, what can I do here? Can I have a job? What do you guys do in this place? And the girl at the desk called the manager down. Manager came down and she said, so do you have like admin experience? Had loads of that because I'd done that kind of stuff working with the students in the aviation academy. I said, yeah, I've got that. She goes, do you have event management? And I said, yeah, definitely didn't. Loads of event management skills, no problem. And she said, well, we're in the middle of planning Space Week. So like right now, 5 years ago, we're in the middle of planning Space Week. Would you be interested in helping us facilitate that? And I said, absolutely. So that's how I got in. I started doing the admin and the event kind of things. And then I kind of just chipped away at people until they started letting me use the equipment and teaching me how to use the telescopes. And my boss now, who is the head of the observatory, or he's one of the co-founders of the observatory and one of the astrophysicists I work with, he rang my then boss, who was the one who hired me, and said, I'd like Danielle to train underneath me as essentially like an apprentice. And I want to train her to be a telescope operator with me because I'm the only one on site that can use the research telescope upstairs in the observatory. Can I have Danielle? And she said, no. She said, she's doing way too much with outreach and the event planning and everything. I need her down here. And she said, take the other guy. One of the other guys, a PhD student going for instrumentation. Take him. He said, nope. If I call him, it's the middle of the night, freezing cold outside. He'll go, oh no, I really don't want to go out. If I call Danielle, I know she'll be there before I am there. And he's right. So he started bringing me in. So I had to do both jobs basically. And I wasn't complaining. This is exactly what I wanted to do that I didn't. When I started this, I thought, how am I going to get into astronomy when I don't have a degree? And it just worked out so well that I'm in a place where they are willing to invest in me and teach me everything I need. So I've been working on the research telescope with, we have two astronomers that are affiliated with the observatory. So I work with them running the telescope, and it's a dream come true. I absolutely love it. And there's nothing like it in the whole world. So I know it's a really long story, but that was actually the short version.
But I have to say,
absolutely an amazing story.
Yeah, I mean, like mostly when when I hear stories of people, there might be like one or two occasions or situations that I tend to get from them. But to be honest, throughout this, the time that you were speaking, I'm like, oh my God, like every time there is a, twist happening, like every second you're doing something else. And initially I was stuck with the, a different hell lot of languages. And from there to how things turned out, and how, I mean, you had shot that whole array of, how life is. Like, you did your studies and you had you had a mainstream job and everything. And then you were like, okay, this is what I wanted to do. That change happening. And then you kind of explored everything. And then I want to say, like, universe started to place things on her way so that she will take it up. And you did. And oh my God, okay, I should say I'm a fan right now. Wow.
Absolutely. Now you see why I put that down as the first question, Aleena, and I never told you why I put it down.
No, I'm like, I always trust you with the questions, but bro, I should say that, I'm so glad that you didn't tell me the exact story. And I hope that I have lived up to your expectations of genuine expressions, because I'm literally so excited. I'm just so excited to go into the rest of the questions.
In our women astrophotographer circles, we have this running joke that we should, take Danny's story, and that this is a story which should be put into like a Disney princess story, because not all Disney princesses are waiting for their prince. Some of them just go ahead and, operate big telescopes. And that is the story we want to see and
Forgot about that,
share with the little girls. Like, we want a fairy tale. Like, Disney, hello, if you're watching us. I don't think you would be, but if you are,
yes. Yes, absolutely. And also I wanted to say that, especially for the young girls, I don't know, in the audience, there might be young girls, but if you are a young girl, or if you are just like me, who is having a midlife crisis in the 20s, just, like these kind of talks actually inspires me that, it's okay to be stuck. It's okay that if you feel like, you don't know what you're doing in life. It's okay if you haven't figured everything out. It's totally fine. Eventually, everything will fall into your your life. And 20 is not the final stage of your life. You always have 30s and 40s. And again, like going back to
60s. You can start anytime.
I was going to say about Katie, actually. She started astronomy very late in life, right? Yeah, so, not just girl, I think everyone is there, but specifically for girls who always feel like, their life is just going to end after 30s or 20s. Don't ever feel that way. I'm with you, and I know you should also be getting inspired from this. With that, we will move on to the next question, because we have been stuck with the first questions for so long now. So the second question is actually, so you mentioned you're also the coordinator for the Space Week Ireland. So if you could tell us a little more about the upcoming events, that is coming up, and also like for the people regionally and also like international, like if they want to stream it online, are there any events happening, any particular working groups of anything of that sort? Yeah. Over to you.
Yeah, so we are smack in the middle of Space Week planning. Just had a very long meeting yesterday about it. So Blackrock Castle Observatory is the coordinator for Ireland. So we run loads of events across the country, and then we get other people involved in running their own events as well. So we end up running hundreds of events across the country. And I think last year we had, I can't remember all of our numbers, we have 400 or something events in total. And we've reached around 90,000, I know it was more than that actually, across Ireland, which is big for us because we have a very small population in Ireland. We're just creeping up to about 5 million in total across the island. So we're really proud of the fact that this is a worldwide initiative. It's an international thing. World Space Week. It's actually across the globe. So there are loads of countries that actually participate, and we end up ranking in the top 3 for the last 4 years, I think we've been. So we're really proud of that because we are a really small population and they go by event numbers. So we got beat out by Pakistan. I know we've been beat out by Saudi Arabia, but they're just in population alone, we can't compete with them. So, so we're really proud that we've got this little tiny island and that so many people are interested in space, because we don't live in a place where you can see the sky very often. So the fact that we have people interested in telescopes and the stars and space and what's happening out there, I'm just impressed with Ireland all the time. So I'm really proud to be a part of coordinating that. And we've always done a lot of in-person events. So the pandemic was really interesting because it shifted everything for us. And going from that, where we would have lots of talks and lots of outdoor events where we would have telescopes set up and having viewing sessions and we would have huge school events where we'd bring 800 kids into an auditorium, which we did 2 weeks before the whole country completely shut down. It was a big shift. Like, how do we still reach those numbers? What do we do? So we did full online experiences the last 2, it would have been 2020 and 2021. And people just didn't lose that interest. People were still interested in getting involved and doing things. So we're doing a blended kind of approach this year. So we'll be doing a lot online. We're really looking forward to doing the in-person events again and doing observing sessions. And I've been chatting with the astronomy clubs, and they're looking forward to getting out and doing observing sessions as well. We're going to have a first quarter moon around that week. So it runs every year from October 4th to the 10th across everywhere. But if you check out Space Week Ireland and spaceweek.ie, that's where we have all our events registered there. So if you're not in Ireland and you can't attend any of our in-person events, we are going to be doing live streams, and we'll be doing virtual events as well. So we're starting a new thing. This is very new. I don't even think we've really announced this yet to anyone, but we're doing Space Week TV. So we're going to be putting out like different things each day. And so we're trying to nail that down at the moment and get that set for Space Week time. So we do a lot of stuff on our YouTube channel is small, but we get some good interaction with the Blackrock Castle Observatory one. And that's where we do a lot of like Q&A type stuff. I love doing that kind of stuff. I love where people can just like type in and be like, what's going on in space? What's up with this rocket? What's up with this thing I see in the sky? So we're hopefully doing a lot more of that this year as well. So it'll be a blended approach.
I mean, that's really interesting. Amazing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I mean, I just have started a small venture here, and we did one entire, Cosmic Fest, which was basically the celebration of International Astronomy Day here. And being at the, other side of the spectrum, planning these things, making sure, we reach out to, audiences. I know it takes a lot of effort. And a lot of planning, a lot of sleepless nights and 3-hour, 4-hour nights. But it's also so rewarding.
Please don't miss out the stress crying also. Like I know the pressure, because even with Aposa, we have been doing a lot of events, and there was this one day I literally just sat in front of my laptop and cried. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just cried, and then after crying, I was like, okay, we are getting everything together, we are doing this. But that it is a part of that journey, right? Like once in a while, that stress crying or that stress busting, something like you might get angry or you just cry it out, something will happen. So it's not all rose-tinted glasses and everything, right?
I get that every year after Space Week. I end up doing like, I go during it. And there's so much that has to be done and focused on during it that I don't realize how stressed I am and how much I'm not. Because it's not really, it's not a stress that's like I'm upset about. It's like, I just want things to go well. So it's more of like an anxiety, I guess. So you're just like going. And it's kind of running on adrenaline, not eating a lot, not sleeping a lot, definitely not exercising the way you should be. And so once it's all over, it's almost that like come down crash where you're like, now what do I do with my life? Like my emails have stopped and people aren't calling me nonstop. What do I do? Like, what is my purpose? Like, so that's when I start
you're
crying.
entering a black hole, right? You feel like you're entering a black hole.
Yeah. Like,
you feel like shut down my life now.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, and also talking about, the Space Week Ireland. So if you guys are interested for joining that activities in person or through online, I will definitely put their website link down in the description box, so you can definitely check it out and join them for the Space Week. And we will move on to the third question now. So, which again goes back to the observatory regarding the scientific projects that are ongoing at the observatory. And also there's a special question. Which one is your favorite among them? Yeah.
Oh, my favorite. Oh, that's tough. Okay. Okay. So you're not going to like this answer. So I definitely have we have a couple projects that we can't talk about at the moment because they're ongoing, but we wear a lot of hats here. So we have the education side of it, we have the public outreach side, and then we have the research side. So there's a lot happening in terms of projects, and we all kind of do a lot of different things. So especially when people say, oh, what do you do with the observatory? I'm like, oh, how much time do you have? Because I don't have a proper title. It depends on who I'm talking to. So like I'm an event coordinator, I'm a graphic designer, I am putting an exhibit together downstairs, I am working on the telescope upstairs. It's like, it's all over the place. So we have, I say first and foremost, the main research that's gone on here, and the reason the observatory was started as a research facility was for black hole research. So it's supermassive black holes and exoplanet research. And so we have the two men that started the place that I mentioned earlier. There are two astrophysicists who were looking for a place to set up camp and start an observatory, and they were looking out in dark sky areas. That's what people ask all the time. Why is there an observatory in the city? This makes no sense. But they were looking out originally like where farmland is. The castle was kind of a mess, and it was just a derelict building, and it had a lot of lives. It was originally a fort to fight off pirates. So if you think my story is long, this is a 400-year-old castle I'm sitting in right now. This place has seen it all. It's been everything. It's done everything. Everyone's walked through here. So it was kind of just left derelict, and the city council owned the property, and they put out a call and said, give us proposals. What should we do with the place? And the guys, since they were already looking for a place to set up, they said, you know, this probably won't go through, but let's try putting in a proposal for an observatory and putting it on the top of the tower there. And there was someone on the council that actually loved the idea of like this old and new, like having this original part of Cork, one of the oldest structures in the city, being used to look towards the future and be very full of technology and all of this. So we are outside a 400-year-old building, but the inside we're looking towards the future. So they won the proposal and they set up the observatory. Now, because it's set up in such a terrible spot in terms of like everywhere you don't want an observatory to be, because it's a maritime fort, so it's at sea level. And so you want an observatory as high up in the mountains as you possibly can get it, as high up in the atmosphere as you can get it. And you want it in a dry location, like the Atacama Desert is where the European Southern Observatory is set up for a reason. It's perfect out there. We're at sea level and we're next to a city. So like we have a lot of light pollution and that kind of thing. And we have a lot of atmosphere above us that's very humid because we're right on the water. But these two were able to develop a technique called selective photometry. They call it CELPHOT for short. And what they do is they're able to analyze the light that they're getting. And the technique, once they apply it to this technique, they're able to basically chunk out data that isn't good and only use the good things. This is a very simplified version of what it is. And so they use all the good data, and they're able to do observing that because they've actually taken this to the deserts, and they've gone to Spain, they've gone out to the Vatican telescope out in Arizona, and they've gone places and tested it on bigger telescopes in better locations, and it works. It's a great technique. So it's not a bad, it's kind of like this was a good thing that it ended up being in this location, because otherwise this technique would not have been developed. So yeah, we've got a great piece of equipment at the top of the tower, and her name's Big Bertha. She's a 16-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain, and she's the farthest object I've ever imaged with her. It was 4.26 billion light years away, a supermassive black hole. It's 100 million times the mass of our sun, powering a galaxy. And I'll tell you, the night I got that image, I was freaking out. Like, I think all of Cork City could hear me, because it's just a little dot on a screen. But when you know what you're looking at, and you know that light started traveling to you across the universe, as the Earth was forming, a castle got built, a telescope was put on top of it, and then you sat there and pressed, okay, let's take a photo there, and then it comes through up on your computer screen. That was like, I was freaking out, absolutely freaking out. So they look at it's a type of supermassive black hole called blazars, and they are black holes that have jets shooting out of either side of them. And blazars, so those are quasars. They're all the ones that have the jets coming out. That's the subcategory is, so those are quasars, subcategories blazars. The blazars have the jets pointed directly at us at Earth, towards Earth. So there's light that comes out of these jets. So what I'm actually getting in the image is the light from the jet. It's not actually, because the black hole is just black, so you're not really seeing a black hole, but I'm seeing the light coming from the black hole. But the fact that it's ancient and it's so old and it came through to my image, like it's just great. So I have this really cool job like that I get to do. So this, I'm talking about projects, I was a very long-winded answer here. When we just finished up a research project during the pandemic, and my head of the observatory, who's also the head of the research office at the university, came up with this idea of using that technique and applying it to masks. So we were able to use an astronomy technique and test masks. Mask efficacy was the purpose of this research project. So we got funded for it, and I was part of the research team. And what they did was, it's actually a really simple idea. So what they did was they took a dummy head and they pushed particulates through it. So they used a nebulizer, and they had like puffs of smoke coming out of this dummy head. And then they had a laser wall in front of it. So as this puff of like mist, basically mist coming out of it, would hit the laser wall, it would light up. So you have a camera on the other side of the wall taking pictures. And when you have those images come back, they're little dots on the screen. So you can analyze those like you would a star field or a supermassive black hole. And so you can analyze the light the same way. And so what they would do is put different masks on, different materials, different fits, different things like that, and run the test and take the images. And they could test which masks were more efficient than others. And so I was really proud to be part of that research project, because it's one of those things where, like when I was young, I thought I can never get a job in astronomy. Look at the stars, like how can you get paid to do that? But when you can take that and apply it to a global pandemic and actually have it mean something, was such an incredible use of, we were talking earlier about there's so many different parts of space and so many different ways to use what you're learning and applying it. It was such an incredible experience and something so amazing to be a part of. And I haven't looked in a long time, but at the start of this year, because the project was 2020, it's summer 2020, at the start of this year, that paper had been downloaded over 10,000 times. So for a peer-reviewed journal, that's really good. We're really happy with that. So if I never work on another research project as long as I live, I'm proud that I was a part of that one and I was a part of that team. So it was really, really cool.
I mean, 10,000, yeah, being downloaded by 10,000 times, that's huge. I mean, you should take it up in the same seriousness. Like I was like 10,000. Oh my God, that's a huge number.
That's
I mean,
a lot.
I mean, yeah, and all the experiments that you have mentioned, and though it was kind of difficult for me for follow-up since I'm not exactly coming from the astronomy level, but still, it sounded so cool. And like this is what I say, like every time when we have an astronomer talk in an episode, I feel so awe about this field, actually, about the things that you do. And the way she actually explained about finding that black hole that was 4.3 billion light years away. And you mentioned about the Earth being formed, and I'm like, wow. Okay, that just okay. And again, another thing that I was feeling so curious was about, like, there are a group of people like you guys who actually take pictures or find black holes and things like that. And recently, NASA just dropped that audio amplified voice of the black hole, and I was like,
yeah,
it's crazy. It was so crazy. And like everything that you have spoken till now with this third question, it's just making me feel so grateful and humble, actually, when you talk about astronomy and the life and everything. Wow, now I'm going off the tangent. And now let's move on to the next question, shall we?
Before we move to the next question, actually, I am so glad we are having this chat, and I'm meeting Danielle after a long time. But I always feel like somewhere we think so alike. We've got such a similar background as well, because I'm also from a liberal arts background who ended up with a job at the planetarium by chance, and like then just being an over enthusiastic cutlet, started following astronomers around saying, give me some job to do, give me something to do. And, so which is why I always feel so happy. And I feel, I think one of the first times when I ever heard Danielle, I always felt like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not that weird. I have company. Do you feel like you have faced challenges and stigmas coming from a non-science background, being a woman in this field where women are not as many in numbers anyway, and especially like when you're a woman plus you're from a non-science background, that's an additional thing. Do you feel like you face a lot of challenges and stigmas, and if you have, how have you overcome them? That's something that we really like.
I don't think you'd find a woman in any field that says that she hasn't. It just is an unfortunate part of just being in the workforce. And I do, in terms of not having a science background, the times when I do feel that is when I'm in at a conference or something where it's like more academic and it's purely academic, because anybody who's been in the world of academia knows it is cutthroat. I've worked in corporate America. Let me tell you, academia is a different level of cutthroat. And there's definitely stigma there. I think in terms of being a woman, definitely have. I think for me, I'm lucky in that I grew up with a lot of men around me. So I had a lot of boys in my family growing up. I have a lot of cousins who are, there's only 3 girls. there's 12 of us and the rest are boys. And then even my mom, like she's one of 7 and she had 5 brothers. So I grew up with lots of uncles, lots of male energy around me. And so I learned from a very young age to hold my own. So like I had no problem transitioning into the workplace, carrying that same sort of energy with me. And I think that I did at some point along the way, because I was younger, put up with things that I shouldn't have, and especially working in the aviation field, because science is very male dominated, aviation is very male dominated. And looking back on things now, I'm like, wow, I shouldn't have had to like listen to that or this. But also when you're young, I think you're trying to prove yourself and you kind of just take things even though you shouldn't. But I think for me, it's been more important recognizing that not everybody has had my experience growing up. Not everyone has that kind of masculine energy. And I don't mean women have masculine energy too. And I've been told before that I have a bit of a masculine energy, just especially when I'm doing business and working and that kind of thing. But not everybody's like that. So I think for me, it's been more important learning that the other women that are around me might need a little bit of support, and they might need somebody to stand up and kind of defend them in a way. And it makes them sound weak, but like, sometimes they get upset about things. They don't even know how to really vocalize it or something. And sometimes you have to be the one to be like, you don't have to put up with that. Don't worry. You are right to feel the way that you feel. Where I wouldn't have even recognized sometimes if someone's hurling abuse at me, and that's kind of extreme, but like if I had to deal with anything, sometimes I just like, it doesn't faze me. It just kind of rolls off like water off a duck's back kind of thing. I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm kind of hard to offend. So it's been more about understanding that, especially getting older, that with that comes a bit of responsibility to make sure that younger women, especially if they're wanting to get into the field, that they're kind of given that space to feel safe and be able to get into a field like this. The worst thing ever is hearing somebody feel intimidated because of the men that they have in their workplace. And we do see it. We've seen it in Stella, even like some girls, they deal with stuff on social media is brutal. Let me tell you, if anywhere I felt the presence of men on, so like they are just brutal, but I have a really thick skin and I'm just kind of, I give it right back to them kind of thing. But we've seen where girls get frustrated and they give up on astronomy or they give up on astrophotography because men are rude to them and treat them like they don't know what they're talking about. So I think it's really important to recognize when young girls are interested and really be like, listen, you can do this. And if you need help, how can we do that for you? Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's a part of it. And hopefully it is getting better. And I think in Ireland, they're very aware of just the differences that exist for women in the workplace. And I feel like here it was so funny because you'd think Ireland is so conservative and that's how I thought about it before I came here, but they're very progressive in that way. And so I think that's really good because I'm fortunate that I have a good group of men around me who's like my boss. When he said, I want Danielle to work, and they said, no, take Simon. He's going to school for this. And he said, no, I want Danielle. It didn't matter to him that I was a woman. He was like, she's got the passion, she's got the drive. I want her to do it. So I'm really lucky that I've been able to have people that give me that sort of opportunities.
Science communication involves trying to excite people who would not have even heard about this before, right? So it's not just simplifying it, it's also exciting them. It's also supposed to be entertaining. It's also supposed to be scientifically correct. There's so much that, you need to be involved. What are some of the challenges you think that, you faced while, communicating science, so on, for such a long time? And what are the challenges you still feel like you are facing? That's first part of my question. Second part of my question is looking at our field in a broader aspect in science communication. The lockdown, of course, changed things for us because suddenly everything and everyone had to move online. In a similar manner, do you think there is a need for like something else that would change how science communication would be done any longer? Like, do you think there's some sort of a pathway or a breakthrough that we need, or do you think it's evolving? And what do you think are the most important parts in the evolution of science communication?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think it's funny that you mentioned the thing about learning the science terms in other languages, because I lived in Spain and studied there, and I got my degree in Spanish. And I said this, we were just talking to somebody recently about this. I have never done a science class in Spanish. My degree was in arts, so like the history and language. So I learned the history of Spain and Latin America. I learned cultural things. I learned architecture. I took art classes. All of that was in Spanish. All the literature, grammar, all of that. Those were done in Spanish. So I have all those terms. Never have I done a math class in Spanish or a science. I didn't know. I said, I could tell you everything about the kings and queens in Spain and what they did. But can I tell you how to say in Spanish 1 + 1 = 2 kind of a thing? And I can get a roundabout way of doing it, but I don't know if those are the technical mathematical terms and things. And so the same thing with like astronomy. I had a woman that came in from Mexico and she didn't speak any English. So I started telling her about the observatory and then realized I didn't know the planets in Spanish. And I got a little like astronomy lesson from her real quick. And we like went through them each one by one. It's funny because you don't think about those things until there are very specific terms for, you have to learn them in English. I mean, even if you had a conversation with somebody who's not an astro and they come in and they hear you talking about a telescope, it does sound like a completely different language. So you have to translate that over into other languages as well. So kudos to you for doing multiple languages, different planetarium shows in different languages. I understand how difficult that could be. So that's a level of science communication that I'm not even at. That's fantastic. I've done a little bit in Spanish, but other than that, no. But yeah, I think with science communication, I think there are always challenges. I think the biggest at the core of it for a science communicator, it has to be passion. It has to come from a place of, I'm doing this not for money, because anybody who does science communication knows there's no money in it. But you have to do it because you are passionate about it yourself, you're interested in it, and then you want other people to also understand how fun that can be and understand that passion. And so I'm lucky, I think we're lucky that space is one of those things where everyone has a little bit of curiosity about it, even if they never looked through a telescope, have never done anything astro related. It's there. So everybody can look up in the sky. Everybody's looked at a star and they've looked at the moon. So that alone, like you're thinking about something. So I think for a science communicator, or for me, when I'm talking to groups, and I talk to all different ages, so it depends. You kind of get good at gauging how I'm going to have this conversation with who I'm talking to, and it changes a little bit. And it's all about making that personal connection, I think, and for me in particular. So it's kind of figuring out where people are coming from. Where are they with their level of space and astronomy knowledge, and kind of what gets them interested in. So for me, it's about kind of molding and creating that experience kind of more, I guess, tailored to what they're going to get, because they're going to get something out of it if they're interested in it. If I start talking to someone who's interested in planets, but I start talking to them about supermassive black holes, they're going to be like, oh, well, that was interesting. Hadn't really thought about that, but I really want to know about Neptune, you know? So it's kind of get them interested in what they're already interested in, and get them thinking more about that, because it kind of leads on to other things. You can build from there. So you can go from that and then work your way towards black holes or whatever subject you're going to be talking about. Now, in terms of like chat, what was the second part? Your second part of your question?
Science communication as a field in general, what do you think we need a breakthrough, or how do you think it's evolving? What do you think we need to sort of pay attention to?
It'd be interesting to see this question across countries, because I'm wondering if there are different challenges I'm sure there are different challenges in different places. And I actually, now that I'm even saying that, one of the things that we're involved in is satellites. We do a lot of satellite stuff here. And part of that is satellite communication and bringing internet to rural areas, because Ireland is a place where I can drive an hour outside of the city and get into places where there's absolutely no internet. So you'd think like this is a pretty modern country, but if you're outside of the big cities, there's nothing. You barely have cell phone service, let alone like internet. So if we're struggling in that way, I can only imagine what other countries are going through. So how do you communicate with people who don't even have access to technology and things? I think that's one thing. We've found this debate with satellites very interesting, and we kind of have the debate amongst ourselves here, because some of us are very pro satellite because of what it can do, and it can connect people, and especially because of the things happening with people being more online and doing more streaming because of the pandemic. We saw it with Space Week, we're able to reach more people in places that we normally wouldn't have, because people had to get very familiar with technology that maybe they wouldn't have. I don't know how many people were sitting on Zoom 5 years ago and doing that kind of thing, especially farmers out in rural Ireland. And now that's kind of normal, and the schools are using them. So that in a way has kind of pushed like being able to communicate to people. And we're hoping that we can get people more connected in that way. But then the other side of that is the light pollution aspect of putting more things into orbit. And then if you're doing research, and especially when you're doing things on something like an exoplanet transit, I'll use an exoplanet transit, for example, because we would be looking at transits across. So we're analyzing starlight. As the planet goes across, your starlight dips. So you're measuring like kind of a shadow. And so if you had a satellite streak through at the time you're imaging something like that, you will lose a lot of data. And you, like with a supermassive black hole, you could be watching it and you can go out each night, it's going to be there. But an exoplanet transit, that's not guaranteed every night. That could transit during your daytime. It's not on the same schedule as you on Earth. So whatever whenever you have a transit happening, and if you have clear skies, you got to go. That's not going to happen all the time. So imagine you have a satellite streaking through the middle of that. That's an issue. So we're a bit torn here in the office on that kind of thing. It's great, but there's also challenges involved in that. And it's only increasing. We see a lot of Starlink going up, and we have a lot of other companies that are getting involved in doing a lot of launches because satellites are getting smaller. So they're a lot cheaper. You can do a lot with them. So they're great, but there's also going to be some complications with that. But one of the challenges that we're trying to overcome here personally at the observatory is for science communication is accessibility. And so we're working on a project right now with a group up in Dublin they work on building dictionaries. The Irish Sign Language is, they're foreign languages in and of themselves. So like American Sign Language is different than Irish Sign Language. So here they're building vocabularies for different subjects. And we're working with them right now because they want to do an astronomy, they want to build more on the astronomy and space vocabulary. And so we're trying to figure out we've already figured out what we're doing. We're going to be, as they're building that up, we're going to be integrating that into videos so that we can reach more deaf audiences. And we want to have that also online as well so that they can access it if they're not able to come down, but if they want to come into the observatory, they'd be able to see these as well. So we've done we did one event with sign language interpreters. And I remember being in the crowd after, and the group there, they were so excited that they were able to attend something that was in their interest. They were just like beaming. They were so happy. And so I think for me, especially, I mean, I don't have any problem like seeing or hearing. So you take it for granted that you can just go to a talk and listen to people. They don't have that kind of material they don't have loads of astronomy materials. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do right now is figure out more things, more material, more experiences for deaf and blind audiences. And that's just starting off here. We're just dipping the toe in the pond right now and hoping to get more resources like that out there very, very soon.
That is amazing. And, while you've been chatting about all of this, just one small question that popped up in my mind. The Blackrock Observatory is open to people to visit, right?
Yeah, so we're not only we have the research telescope at the top of the tower, but you can come inside of the castle. We've got a science exhibit downstairs on the ground floor of the castle. So we actually do blended. They can come into the exhibit, they get a planetarium show and history tour. And the history tour, you get to go up to the top of the tower and you see the observatory. And we have little windows on the outside of the observatory, so you can look in and you can see Big Bertha inside as well.
Lovely.
I think
anyone who wants to plan a trip to Ireland, please add,
exactly.
this observatory on your list.
Yeah, for sure.
And also the fact that it's an old castle, like you mentioned, it was also constructed by pirates, if I got it.
To fight correct. Pirates, yeah.
To fight pirates, right? Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of things happening also along with the observatory factors. So definitely, if you are in Ireland or if you're planning to go to Ireland, do check out this observatory. I feel like it's already super cool. And yeah, I mean, and it was so nice hearing from you about all these things, like, from your journey to astronomy to the observatory and, talking about the stigma and, when it comes to women being in space or women in astronomy and like, the different technologies that you guys are using. And also like, with regard to the satellites being there, which will, which can probably affect or not affect. There is this ongoing debate about it and everything. It was so nice. And like you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, like regarding that panel discussion that you watched on TV, which was one of the twists of your life, like where that professor, I don't remember the professor's name, but you mentioned about like this universe is within ourselves also, like it is not just what we see, can also be within us, because we are basically just space matter all over except for helium. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like, that's something that was actually an eye-opener for me also, because I never thought about it like that way. I mean, the universe, the solar system, yeah, the atoms, molecules, electrons, neutrons, the structure, yeah, it kind of relates. So yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, I mean, it was so nice hearing about, astronomy, your journey and everything today in today's episode. And Pooja, you have anything to add?
No, I feel like it's always a pleasure to chat with Danny. And if we start talking, we're going to end up talking and chatting for a long, long time. So I'm just holding myself back. And I'm just going to be very formal and say, thank you, Danielle, for being there. I'm so glad we could finally catch up. And it's I feel so happy that we'll be able to share your story with so many more here.
Thanks so much.
And also for the audience out there, one last reminder for you all. So on this coming Saturday, that is 3rd September, 7:30 p.m. IST, we will have Danielle on Space Smurfs Instagram Live, where you can ask her questions about the observatory, the astronomy, her journey, and whatever that comes under the umbrella of space and astronomy. So please do join our live session on 7:30 p.m. IST and ask her the questions that you would like to ask. And she will be more than happy to answer your questions. So with that mentioned, and I know this will be one of the lengthiest podcasts that we have recorded so far, definitely we'll see you guys on. Until then, this is your host, Aleena, and
Pooja here.
signing out.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Keep smurfing.